Yo, what's up, everybody? We back again. Somebody told me they enjoyed the last video, and like I said, as long as y'all give me feedback and tell me you like what I'm doing, I will continue to bring these kind of videos. So today, one of my favorite podcasters, Chente Drach, and he did an interview with Luis Guzmán. If you don't know Luis Guzmán, right now he's the star of a show called Wednesday with what's her name, Jenny Ortega, right? He's the dad. And so, obviously, like, if you're older, you don't know him from Wednesday. You know him from a lot of other movies like Carlito's Way and stuff like that. But, anyways, I really like this interview, especially for the phrases, because he was born in Puerto Rico, but he was raised in the United States, so he doesn't use his Spanish as much. And so, I'm not going to say it was rusty. I'm going to say it's just not at the level of the guy that hosts the podcast who's born and raised in Puerto Rico, right? Which is perfect because that's probably you. You're someone that is not a native level speaker. And so this is it's a perfect interview. I'll put the link in the bio if you want to go watch it. But we're just going to talk about some stuff that mainly that the podcast host said. There's a couple things that Luis Guzman said or he said in English and the podcast host filled them in, which is cool. That's what's going to happen to you in conversations too. So it's perfect. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you don't know a word. That's what people are there for, right? To help you. And that happens in English too. Sometimes you're talking and you're like, and the person fills it in for you. So one of the first things that caught my attention that is a useful phrase that can make you sound, more native, more fluent. The podcast host, Chente, he said, no me podría imaginar, right? He was talking about a situation. He was talking about Luis Guzman, moving from Puerto Rico to New York in the 50s or the 60s, whenever it happened. And he said, no me podría imaginar.
Me encanta esa ciudad. Pero no me podría imaginar ser un chamaquito.
Blah, blah, blah. That just means I could not imagine. And that's where we get into using something that's not so basic, right? You can say, I can't imagine, which is right now, I can't imagine. Or you say, I couldn't imagine, which is talking about I'm going to say something imaginary, something that doesn't exist right now, right? I couldn't imagine doing this. And then you're going to say something that is not happening right now. So, pretty basic. But like I told you in the last video, I like pointing out these phrases because it's something that you already know. It's not like it's a phrase where you're like, man, that doesn't exist at all in English. I got a couple of those later. This is pretty basic stuff. So the next thing, number 2, an expression that you'll hear a lot. He says, lo más difícil.
4 shows, pero lo más difícil para mí siempre era mi primer línea.
Which is like the hardest part, the most difficult thing. These are not exact translations, right? We're just trying to give you some English equivalents, right? So, and that is like not just for this particular phrase. That's like everything. Lo más fácil, you know what I mean? Like in English, we say the most difficult or the easiest thing or the hardest thing. In Spanish, like I'm trying to think of a way to say it the wrong way and I can't think of it. But like you have to say lo más difícil. You can't say, I can't even think of what the wrong thing would be. I'm sure I said it a long time ago in the past. Don't worry about the wrong thing. Just know if you want to say the hardest part is, the hardest thing is, the easiest thing, you can say lo más difícil, lo más fácil, blah, 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 right? So, next thing. This is an example of what I was saying earlier. Luis Guzman is trying to say something in Spanish. He can't really think of it. He says, like my calling. And the podcast host fills it in for him and he says, naciste para eso.
Para mí, eso fue, como dicen, my calling.
Rápido lo supiste, como que yo nací para esto. ¿Eras bueno?
No sé si yo supí que yo nací para esto, pero en mi corazón.
Right? Naciste para eso, which is being born for this. Because essentially that's what a calling is, right? You were born for whatever the concept is. And you can apply that to a lot of stuff. Like, I don't know, naciste para ser una estrella, right? You were born to be a star. Like, that's your thing. That's your calling, right? So, not too complicated. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Just nacer para blank, right? Use that and you can say someone is born to do something. The next one. In the comments, if you're not from somewhere that's Caribbean, you can tell me if this is only a Caribbean thing. I actually don't know. I pretty much deal with Caribbean people on a daily basis. So like Mexican slang, Spanish slang, stuff like that it's not my thing. I don't actually know it like that. But he says encojonado, right?
Tú sabes, los boricuas, si tienen que faltar un día de trabajo por un caso de un muchacho, you know?
Van a estar encojonados.
Yeah.
And to be encojonado, estar encojonado, is to be angry. Why is it to be angry? Don't ask me. It's like the expression pissed off in English, right? You don't actually break it down and say, well, pissed is urine and pissed off is... You don't do that. You're just like, I'm pissed off. You pissed me off. So yeah, just learn the expression. You'll hear people say that a lot. Me tiene encojonado, me tiene encabronado. Yo me encojono, right? So yeah, you'll hear that a lot. You'll hear these three things a lot in at least in Puerto Rico, but I'm pretty sure in like other Caribbean places they say it too, right? Me tiene encabronado, me tiene encojonado, yo me encojono, right? Those three things, you'll hear that a lot. Just know that they mean pissed off. If you hear somebody say that, yo me encojono, like you probably did something wrong, bro, to be honest. The opposite of that is acojonarse. Why everything is related to nuts, don't know. And if you didn't get that already, this is derived from cojones. Cojon, encojonado. Yeah, nuts. I guess I don't know. I don't really know where it's derived from, to be honest. I don't know the etymology. It's just know that everything that has to do with anger and being afraid is having nuts or not having nuts, right? It's the same thing in English. Like people say if someone's brave, like that dude's got big balls, right? Like that's kind of vulgar, but it is what it is. Moving on. Another example of Luis Guzmán not knowing how to say something, making a really good guess, and the podcast host filling them in. Again, this is something that'll happen. False cognates. It's a lot of things that you would think. I'm sure this is how you say it, and you'll be wrong. It's fine. People make mistakes. We all make mistakes. It happens. So Luis Guzmán says something along the lines of chemistria or something like that, right? And then I think he kind of feels like he knows he said it wrong, so he says chemistry. And then the podcast host is like, oh, química.
La chemistría.
Mm-hmm.
Chemistry.
Ajá, la química.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Trato, okay, papá.
No worry.
Okay. Pero
And same concept, like in Spanish, tener buena química is like having good chemistry. So it's really like I don't want to call it a direct translation, but it is though. Like it's the same thing. In English, we say, oh, they have good chemistry. We have good chemistry. And also chemistry is a subject. Same thing in Spanish. Tener buena química. Química is also chemistry. Same kind of concept. Super, super easy. Let's move on. They're talking about someone, and the podcast host says, que en paz descanse, right?
En esa película también sale que en paz descanse Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Sí.
¿Tú tenías escenas con él?
Que en paz descanse. This is something that is super common. It's just like English where you say, may he rest in peace, right? You're expressing a desire that he rest in peace, he or she rest in peace, which is different than rest in peace. When you just say rest in peace, then you say descansa en paz, right? Like it's almost like a command, like rest in peace. But when you say may he rest in peace, that changes it, right? So that is why in que en paz descanse, it's not descansa, it's descanse, because it's like quiero que en paz descanse, right? So simple, same kind of thing though. Like it's gonna make you sound more fluent, more fluid when you're talking about something, and very quickly you're just like que en paz descanse, and you keep talking, right? It's like, oh, okay, like this dude knows what he's talking about, or this woman knows what she's talking about. Next concept, peleón, peleona, right?
¿Tú eras problemático de chamaquito? ¿Eras peleón y eso?
Bueno, fíjate.
This one's a little tough. This is something you need to get through context. I'm going to tell you anyways, but I would still suggest that like maybe don't use it until you're super comfortable with it, right? But if I had to describe peleón in English, I would say someone that's like feisty, like combative. ¿Cómo se dice? Discutidor. Like argumentative. Right? So a fighter, but it doesn't necessarily mean like you were literally beating people up. You could have been, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, right? Kind of the same thing in English. Like you could say somebody's scrappy. Oh, there we go. You could be like, yo, that dude's scrappy. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going around beating everybody up, but you also think like they might beat you up, bro. Like this dude likes to argue. This dude gets defensive about everything. Like real peleón, right? Let's move on. Very related to that, I'm pretty sure this too is also a very Caribbean term. Cocotazo, right?
Y los muchachos me están dando a mí y yo vengo plegado, tú me metes un cocotazo porque tú me dices, no te dejes de dar.
He says his mom gave him a cocotazo. That's like in English, we legitimately do not have a word for it, but right, it's like a conk on your head, like on your coco, like with the knuckles, los nudillos, right? Like that. So yeah, we don't have a word for it. You just have to it's actually cool when you actually cross into another language that has something that's more simple, right? In English, if someone conks you on the head, you got to say, yeah, this dude conked me on the head with his knuckles. Not in Spanish, bro. Cocotazo. Everyone knows what you're talking about instantly. If they're Caribbean, like I said, I don't know if that's outside of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, maybe Venezuela. Venezuela's always like up in there, right? So yeah, moving on, something that's related to it. In the same sentence, he goes on to say, blah, 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 me dio, or me dieron. I don't remember which one he said.
Bueno, mami, ella me dio.
Apliqué la misma.
Y bueno, yo le di.
But again, at least in Caribbean countries, when someone is talking about beating someone up, you will often hear them say something really short. They'll say le dio, le dieron, le diste, which is most of the time is short for una paliza. Le dieron una paliza. They beat them up. But like let's just say you're watching the news or reading the news and like someone got jumped and robbed. Like the commenters are gonna say le dieron. They're not gonna put a full sentence. Like they might not even know the full sentence. I don't know. Le dieron, le diste. Super, super easy. If you don't even have to remember una paliza. Just remember gave it to him. It's kind of like, all right, in English, we might say, yeah, he really let him have it. Or actually, we say that sometimes. Like, he gave it to him, bro. Like, he was giving it to him. And you're like, if you don't know English, you might be like, let him have it. What did he let him have? Or like, he was giving it to him. What did he give it? Like, what did he give? It, like, an ass whooping. Like, that's really what it is. Like, but we don't have to say that. You know what I'm saying? If I'm like, bro, he was letting him have it. Like, he was letting him have it. Right? So, yeah, there you go. Okay, next one. Again, a pretty literal translation. Luis Guzmán is talking about Jack Nicholson, and he says, "Buena gente."
Jack, he's an institution, man. Pero buena gente.
We say the same thing in English. At least if you're from the South, we say good people. You're talking about someone and you say, "Oh man, super cool dude, good people, I promise you." Same thing. Kind of sounds weird on its own, but it's not weird. Just get used to saying it. Buena gente, good people. You already probably said it in English, so it's not that crazy. All right, last one. I'm going to leave y'all with one that's kind of complicated. Not that complicated. We're not going to talk about the etymology because actually I don't know the etymology. I do know it's kind of like a theater term, it's something that you say when you're talking about an actor, right? So he's talking about Jenna Ortega? I don't know her name. Mrs. Ortega. He's talking about Mrs. Ortega. And he says, hace el papel, right?
Ella se llama Jenna. ¿Cuál es el apellido?
Ortega.
Jenna Ortega hace el papel de Wednesday Adams, la hija de Gómez Adams.
Which is playing a role. But it's also playing a role. So it's playing a role as an actor on a TV or a theater, but it's also playing a role in real life. Like I'm playing the role of a tough guy, or he's playing the role of a tough guy, but he's not even tough like that. Like he's just playing a role. That is hacer el papel, right? So again, this doesn't mean you need to go out and try to use this stuff like tomorrow, but maybe now if you've never heard one of these before, now you can look it up. Or the next time you see it, you might be like, oh, I didn't know what that was at all. Now I know what it is, which means the next couple times you hear it and see it, you'll really have an understanding of it. So I'm just trying to introduce y'all to new stuff. I think, that was the end of the list. If you have something specifically, like maybe if you want to get an interview breakdown and you can't understand the interview, I will break that interview down for you. I will pick out some stuff out of there that you need to hear, even if I don't particularly find it interesting. Because, I mean, like, yeah, this stuff is interesting to me, but if you don't care about the interview and you're not going to go watch it and you don't care about these terms that I brought up, it doesn't really do you any good, right? I already know this stuff. So if you have a favorite actor, favorite athlete, I don't know, a cooking video, and you're like, oh, I'm just not there yet, and I want to know what they're talking about, I want to know, like, there's so many phrases in there that I didn't know, shoot me the name of the video, and the next time I make a video, I'll do a breakdown like this, and maybe I'll get more detailed and put more phrases since it would be something that you didn't understand, right? So anyways, thanks for watching. This was pretty long-winded. I'm trying to make them shorter, but like with all these phrases and trying to give English, it's a little bit tough. So let me know if you liked it. Like I said, if you want something more, if you want something better, let me know, and I got you. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.